My name is Lauren Whitsell, and welcome to an exclusive investigative look at the fateful night of July 1st, 2002. In Oberlingen, Germany, 2 passenger planes crashed in mid-air, killing all 71 people aboard both planes. This crash was caused by human error and improper use of polar graphs. Here is a dramatic representation of the events that happened the night of the crash.
Climb.
TCAS is telling them to climb. The controller is telling them to descend.
It says climb.
He is guiding us down.
Peter Nielsen thinks he's averted a collision by telling the Russian plane to descend. But what he doesn't know is that the DHL pilots have received a TCAS instruction telling them to descend.
Increase! Dilmoon 600, TCAS descent!
They're trying to tell Nielsen that they have a TCAS instruction to descend, but Peter can't hear them. If both planes obeyed TCAS, there'd be no problem. But the Russians, instead of climbing, have followed the controller's orders. Now both planes are diving towards each other.
He's going below us!
Fuck, what is it?
Peter on the left!
Increase climb. Increase climb.
Climb, it says!
Climb!
Descend! Fuck, descend hard!
Climb!
The tail of the DHL clips the belly of the Tupolev, tearing it apart. The pilots soon lose consciousness. The DHL struggles on for another 2 minutes.
To get a closer look at how 2 airplanes with state-of-the-art technology and crash avoidance systems could collide at 36,000 feet, we go to Hudson and Morgan, who will give you some information on polar graphs and their significance.
Hello, my name is Morgan O'Hanlon, and today I'm going to talk to you about the mathematical context of polar graphs and their use by air traffic controllers. As seen in the video, a circular graphing utility is used by air traffic controllers to monitor the course of planes. This kind of graph is called a polar coordinate grid. Polar graphs differ from rectangular graphs due to the replacement of the x and y axes for the radius and angle of a point. Additionally, they are centered around a point called the pole, in the center of the circle rather than the origin. As seen on the graph on the board, multiple circles of different sizes sharing a common center, known as concentric circles, and rays originating from that center make up a polar graph. For example, on a rectangular graph, you would plot the point 3, 6 by first counting 3 units on the horizontal axis, and then 6 units up on the y-axis. But on a polar coordinate grid, plotting a point would be very different. An example of this is the point 3, 45 degrees, which can be plotted by first counting out 3 circles from the center, and then 45 degrees upwards from the far right of the circle. Knowledge of polar graphs and other skills necessary to protect people on flights around the world are studied by air traffic controllers in special academies run by the Federal Aviation Administration or other organizations of similar purpose. Although this career is rated as the 8th most stressful by Yahoo, confidence in the knowledge of polar graphs and frequent breaks to ensure concentration allow air traffic controllers to successfully work their positions. Additionally, the job is rewarding with its importance in the safety of the 1 billion people who are directed through the skies and paid with a generally high salary. However, completion of college algebra, trigonometry, geometry, calculus, and statistics are necessary to be competent in this profession. In Mr. Kiker's pre-calculus class, students learn the mathematics behind the tools that these professionals use. In the case of the Oberlingen crash, Peter Nielsen was the only air traffic controller on duty at the time, and the task of preventing the 2 planes from colliding proved overwhelming for a single worker. Crashes like that of the passenger jet and cargo plane over Überlingen, Germany, are exceedingly rare and could be prevented by closer monitoring, further communication, and more frequent brakes by air traffic controllers. More technicians with the skills to track aircraft could have resulted in the survival of the 71 lives that were lost.
Hello, my name is Hudson, and now I'll be able to provide a more in-context look at the actual collision. We'll start from the air traffic control operator's viewpoint, or Peter Nielsen's viewpoint. At the time of the collision, he was the only operator on duty, and his systems were hindered by maintenance that was going on. On the screen, Nielsen would have seen something like this without the trajectory paths of the two planes, so he would have only seen dots and the two planes right here. Now, the Tu-154M was traveling about 253.10 meters per second at 184 degrees, versus the Boeing, which was traveling a little bit faster, 261.338 meters per second, going at about 94 degrees. Up until a minute before the crash, Nielsen had been busy attending to a different flight, and he was unaware of any potential danger until about 58 seconds before the crash. Using the speeds of the plane and the crash site as the pull for a graph, or the center, 58 seconds before the crash, the Tu-154M would have been located about 14,680 meters and 274 degrees, somewhere right around here. And the Boeing would have been located at 15,157,4 degrees, or somewhere right over here. Allowing for 2 seconds of reaction time, or the time it would take for Nielsen to realize that they're going to crash, the planes would have moved to about 14,173,274 for the Tu-154M, and for the Boeing, it would have been right about 14,634 and 4 degrees still, so coming in very shallow. Now, at this point, Nielsen should have dealt with the situation in a timely fashion, but due to the maintenance work already being taken place, it would have been about until 34 seconds before the crash that an alert would have been sent out. Now, switching to the cockpits of the Tu-154M, the pilots would have heard Nielsen coming on the radio and telling him that they needed to descend 1,000 feet due to oncoming traffic. However, at the same time, the plane's automated crash avoidance system would have come on, telling him to climb. The hesitation due to the conflicting instructions proved to be fatal, because as they decided to descend, the automated crash avoidance system in the other plane, the Boeing, told that plane to descend as well. So you have two planes at 36,000 feet. Both of them are starting to descend right on collision course still. About 10 seconds before the actual crash, the pilots would have spotted the other plane in the cockpit window and gone into a see and avoid method that are only used for emergencies like this. But 10 seconds is not enough time to get a huge plane around. Now, the other plane from, let's say, the Boeing from the Tu-154M cockpit would have done an exponential function growth for the size of the plane. So at the beginning, about 10 seconds, the plane would have been that big. But as the time decreased until the crash, the plane would have eventually engulfed the Tu-154M before the crash. Now, if you look down here, this is roughly what the planes look like as a crash. See, the Tu-154M's trying to climb to avoid, and the Boeing is still trying to descend to avoid the crash, but unfortunately it was too late, like I said earlier. So, at the time of the crash, the Tu-154M clips the tail of the Boeing, causing the Tu-154M, a slightly smaller plane, to just blow up into 4 separate chunks, sucking any survivors of the initial collision out into the night sky at about 34,000 feet. Now, the Boeing B-757 actually remained intact after the crash, with the exception of its tail, which was clipped off. So it was able to stay in the air for about another 4 miles before it crashed right outside Überlingen, and that explosion killed both the pilots. As for the additional survivors of the initial collision, the Tu-154M, being sucked out in the night sky and the lack of oxygen would have killed the rest of them. And that's how the better use of polar graphing could have prevented the deadly Überlingen mid-air collision.
As you can tell from the report, polar coordinates and graphs played a huge role in this crash, but polar graphing can be applied to navigation on the ocean and in outer space as well. NASA, the military, and airports use this method of navigation every day to ensure our safety. Like many other topics that can be found in a high school math class, polar coordinates and graphs have real-life application that is very important to our daily lives. I hope you enjoyed this special on the Überlingen crash and the application of polar graphing. I'm Lauren Whitsell, and thank you for watching.